Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, okay. No, no.
Gotta get it. Swear I gotta get it. Look at how I'm living, belly food up in the kitchen. Ain't no competition. Ain't nobody listening to you talking.
I asked Kevin if I can use the balcony of his apartment to film people that I hope to meet in the streets of his neighborhood. The same neighborhood I lived in when I was in grade school.
Poet, that poet, and like that potent street. Get it while you living, ain't no time for me to wait. You know what day? I'm rolling night, just trying to make sure everything's alright. So working all day, I'm rolling night, just trying to make
The structure of the film is based around rhythms, it's based around colors, compositions, it's based around the faces and how they appear in the film. It's cinema. So the word documentary for me is a very bad word right now because most people, when they hear documentary, I'm not talking about documentary filmmakers, but I'm talking about the general public. When they hear the word documentary, they're kind of curious, but they also think about a very particular form of cinema.
What's going on, bro? We out here doing a little movie thing, you know what I mean? Movie? Yeah, it's a movie thing right there. Well, you see, don't look. That man paid for your story.
working all day, I'm rolling night, just trying to make sure everything's alright.
I begin the sequences with the people talking by having this young rapper singing, not telling a story, but singing a story. And then you have the women there, so you're sort of far away and you get the sense of the neighborhood because you see the wide shot, and then we go inside, and then you have the cops. These are all kind of mise en scène that gives you information about the world. And then you go deeper and deeper, and then the film finally ends with the two last characters in this kind of terribly ugly room, but we all know where the room is by this point. And then we finally end the film with a man telling us that his life, he hopes he can maybe go back to prison to live the rest of his life. Not by shooting someone or something, but by having dirty urine. And what he means by that is having drugs in his system. And he can't vote, he can't legally, he can't have a driver's license. So how is he going to exist? So at the age of 60, he's kind of a no one, a zero man, And that's what can I say beyond that?
That's good. I'm addicted to weapons. I like guns. Well, I'm a weapon. They guns.
I hear you. No, but I'm serious. Would you like to go on camera? We're independent. We're shooting right now. Independent film.
He's shooting you right now. Why do you think I took my
Not the second, but you get $15 per story. $15 per story. I tried to connect the film with my stories of my neighborhood, my city that I grew up in, and then I let that go. But it's still a little bit in the film, and then of course I have to resolve my story in the film because it's like another fil rouge. You have one fil rouge, another fil rouge, and the final fil rouge is my mother's death, which is kind of like the death of the city, the death of the system for me, and me, and I say at the end, it's probably I wanted to have the sense of traveling in a film. That you travel beyond the film, and for me, the very end is I suggest the idea that we can travel around America and we'll find many stories like this. So it ends with this idea of movement, and going to heaven because of my mother's death, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, these are just cinematic things I was playing with, these tools of what cinema does, because cinema is about rhythm and it's about composition, it's about emotions. And it's about kind of a simple intellect, but it's also about deep feelings. If you're poor in America, what do you have to offer to the system? And I thought, okay, well, the only thing these people have to offer that has any value is their story, the story of tragedy. And what I mean by that, more specifically, is like my mother, who was a prisoner in Siberia, in the gulags. She was not a wealthy person, and the one great value that she had in her life was that she survived the gulag, and she went to Iran, and then she went to India, and then she met my father, and they went to Africa to live in a camp there as displaced people. Then they moved to England. Then they tried to figure out where to live, and they moved to America. It's a huge story. They never had a lot of money, but they had this incredible asset in the bank, the bank of life. And she was always frustrated because no one really wanted to hear the story, because when you have a real tragic story, the general public tries to avoid that, and they're afraid of you because they're afraid to be intoxicated. They're afraid to become sort of drunk by your story, and because it's so overwhelming. So my mother always lived with this kind of frustration in her life that she can't really tell. There's no one interested in her story. That's where I began my idea of exploring this, because I think that all the people in the film, and I discovered this as I was filming, they really want to tell their story.
Well, they call me Pineapple.
When you're in America and you go out of New York or out of the big cities and you really look at what's going on, you have to do something, because there is a state of crisis in America that the media does not write about. For me, it was important to think about not making kind of a generic film like traveling to some city that I don't know about, because I don't do that, but to make the film about the place that I know the best, which was where my mother was living, and where I didn't just grow up there, because I grew up in many places around the world, but I lived there for a very important part of my life, and it formed who I am.
Sometimes I don't know if I'm gonna have enough money to pay all my bills and provide school clothes and school supplies for my children.
I shot with 2 cameras, and the second camera was really important to be able to do the montage. I really thought a lot about the visual, the composition of the scenes, and this very direct kind of presentation where the person's face is like a map. I mean, the most pleasant thing to look at in cinema is the face. You can look at a mountain, you look at a flower, you can look at things, but you get bored with those things. But the face, you will never get bored with, especially when people are saying something interesting. So for me, the mise en scène is the faces.
You got gang violence going up, you got racial violence going up, and before you know it, everybody's just at each other's throat.
And then angry and ready to fight.
It's just not, like, I think, me, myself, I can actually say I think it's gonna be hell. It's gonna be hell.
It was really important for the people to be speaking to the audience, because this is a way of taking the audience and saying, okay, listen to me, and I have something to tell you. But these people were also shy. I don't know if you saw that, but you can feel kind of a shyness, and as they talk more, then they forget about the camera, they forget about everything, and they enter into this mental space of their frustration. I started shooting very quickly after I was introduced to the people, so the film really has the beginning of my encounter with them. Because I spent some more time with people after, and with some people I went with them to their houses, and I filmed that just in case I may want to use that material. But what I discovered was that was all superfluous, because if I went into that direction, that I would have to spend a lot more time with them. And I think that we all kind of know what it's like to be poor. I mean, we can kind of imagine, you have a bad house, you live like shit, you don't have good furniture, or you have like plastic furniture, worse than IKEA. This is a cliche, and I wanted to avoid that, because it would take away from the story, because then there's too many questions that need to be answered. So in this film, that was not necessary.
Felons still gotta eat, they still gotta live, they gotta breathe, they still gotta work. But as long as you did your time and did what they required you to do, why are you still holding this against me? Why are you still holding me accountable for something that I did when I was a kid?
In the beginning, I was kind of shy about it. But what I discovered was that the woman with her boyfriend who was hit in the head, and the 3 children, when at the end of that scene, you can hear her saying, "Thank you guys, goodbye." And then she left the building and she cried, because she felt like she was, like everything was, like she was able to talk to somebody. And it was a momentary thing, because she had to enter her life. But to see that is quite emotional. I didn't film that because it was beyond that. But so all of them, just about everybody thanked me. But not like, not that I need thanks, But it's because they didn't realize what they were entering, because they never, I don't think any of those people ever had the opportunity to sit in front of someone and say, okay, here's my life, you know? And I could only shoot 3 or 4 stories a day because it was too exhausting. 99% of the black people, and maybe even the white people, have spent time in prison, right? So that's huge. And I never thought about that until I encountered it. Most of the women have been sexually abused, you know, in different ways. Most of the people have a lot of children. So there are things that are not in a film, but these are very big issues that would require another kind of film and another style to explore.
Everything's alright, so working all day, up all night, just trying to make sure everything's alright.
There's the community of people who've been in prison. They don't look at themselves as bad guys who've been in prison. And I'm saying this with a great deal of authority because I asked about this. So they look at each other as being the survivors of the Prison Survivors Club. And in a way, that is a kind of a political statement for them. So you're excluded from society, so there is no place for you, so you're by necessity part of this club. I mean, it's happened to me when you walk down the street and you see these poor people, because that's what they are. After a while, you don't see them. You avoid them, and they avoid you. There's like an invisible wall, and that's what I mean by when I said apartheid. It's another kind of apartheid. It's a psychological, economic apartheid. There's like a whole ritual of activity that they perform every day in their lives that I participated in, and out of that came this kind of knowledge, you know, this idea of creating some kind of movement, for lack of a better word. It has to come out of that. It can't come from like the idea of Marxism, for instance. You and I can go to the university and we get an education. We can go out and find a way, you know. But these people can't do that. There's no access to that other world. It just and if there is, they have to be brilliant. They have to be super brilliant. Do you know what I mean?
When you go fill out a job application, here it is. Have you ever been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor or anything? Me personally, I don't think they even look at your application anymore after that. I think they automatically just stick it in the shredder, probably ball it up, throw it in the garbage. Next.
This film festival has nothing to do with those people's lives, and everything that's happening here is so far away from them that it's like a fucking, you know, this is like Disneyland for them. Meaning that I have to get into their community with the film. There's no cinemas in that community. There is a cinema, but you have to drive to it. They don't have cars. These people are totally isolated. So in order for me to do what you suggest with a film, is I would have to create screenings for them. My idea is to do a tour of American cities and show the film. So I have to build an infrastructure to do that. I don't want to make my films just for festivals. So all these films in this festival have a very hard time being shown to the people that need to see them. I'm using this word apartheid not lightly, because we live in a world economic apartheid. And you know, I mean, it's good what you're doing with this thing, but you know, can you reach those people that need to be reached? I don't know.
I want to do something to help kids like me that have had parents addicted to drugs and were less fortunate, and help them, let them know they're not alone, and that it does get better. Well, most of the time it gets better, but to let them know they're not alone in the world and there's people like them.
The answers will happen by accident. I think that, you know, there's going to be young people that are going to have some great ideas of how to break this, but you still have to have, like in '68, you know, you still need a kind of riot to break a wall, and these walls are kind of the walls of the internet. I mean, I don't know how you deal with that, you know, the society walls. I mean, I don't know, but I think it's like the next struggle.
I've been through a lot and done a lot. Been shot at, stabbed, choked, fought, beat up by the police. There's nothing you can do to me but leave me alone. Or love me, that's it.